Alright, so here's going to be 10.5 or 10-5 parabolas. These are not going to be your standard parabolas that you're used to, so be prepared how we're going to do this differently. So we want to be able to write the standard equation of a parabola and its axis of symmetry, and graph a parabola and identify its focus, directrix, and axis of symmetry. The directrix is going to be the big point there. Okay, so we've seen a parabola before, that U-shaped graph, but let's go with the more specific definition. A parabola is the set of all points that are on an equal distance from a focus and a fixed line called a directrix. Now, the reason why this is important, guys, is because when you're looking at like satellite dishes, like DirecTV or something like that, they're all built on a parabola, built with a parabola. And that little point you see pointing back towards the dish, that's the focus. That allows that any transmissions as they hit the dish will go right back to the focus because they bounce off the dish into the focus. And there's a reason for that. And then the directrix helps them establish that idea of how to make that build. You know, they even do this for larger satellites and things like that. So kind of keep that in mind. Anyways, the vertex of a parabola is exactly halfway between the focus and directrix. So keep that in mind, that it's in the middle. And these are like equal distances from it. Also keep in mind that a parabola always opens away from the directrix. It will always be away from the directrix. So you got to make sure you have that. Now on page 752, they give you what is called the standard form of the equation of a parabola. So this is going to be a little bit different than what we've done before. And again, keep in mind that part of this cannot be done with a calculator. We're trying to show you how you can understand this graphically yourself by looking at the paper. So you have this, what's the horizontal, when it's x and y squared. Notice that's the one a parabola that would be going to the left or to the right. And the vertical, which is more what we've seen before, but we're doing the formula a little bit differently. So that way it'll make it easier to find the focus and the directrix. Notice here that the focus and the directrix are pretty much using the same numbers, but one is positive, one is negative. Okay, and again, this is when the vertex is at 0, 0. Okay, and we'll see later when it moves away from that. Okay, so let's look at this here. We're going to find the equation of a parabola that looks like this, and I'll give you the focus, and I'll give you directrix. Now notice here that they're the same number, just different signs. Okay, so there's a formula. Basically, this is when it's sideways like this, we are saying x is equal to 1 over 4p times y squared. Okay, so that's right there. Okay, 1 over 4p times y squared. So what is p? Well, that's what you get. P is that distance. Okay, and in this case, it's actually the distance to the directrix. I'm sorry, not the directrix, the focus. This one actually is, keep in mind, negative p, the opposite. So we're saying here p is equal to negative 6. So if I put that in there and say to get the equation 4 times negative 6, I would get negative 24 because it says 4 times p and p is negative 6. So then my formula is just 1 over negative 24 or negative 1 over 24 y squared. That's it. So all you have to do is find the distance from say here, the center, to that focus, and multiply by 4, and that becomes your denominator. Okay, so what happens if I just give you information, like say here, write the equation with the vertex at 0, 0 and a directrix at negative 3. Well, keep in mind that that vertex or that directrix, that's your p, that's your, say, distance from the vertex. Okay, and that's a negative 3. Now we need to always take the opposite of that, so that means p has to equal 3. Then I'm using the formula, since it says y equals whatever the directrix is, that's what's going to be there for your equation. If it's x equals, then I would have said x, and then that means I'm going to say y equals x squared. 1 over 4 times 3 is 12. So basically, it should be 1 over 12 x squared. Again, something that should be fairly simple. It doesn't take that many steps. Okay, so let's do an example where I give you the parabola and I want you to find the vertex, the focus, the directrix, and the axis of symmetry. So from a drawing, maybe you have to find all this stuff. Or maybe even from the equation, can you find all these points? Okay, so we're going to do it first from an equation. Y is equal to 1/8 x squared. Okay, the vertex has to be at 0, 0 because there's nothing inside the x. There's actually a different formula we'll use when we have moved the vertex off 0, 0, and you'll see that in a minute. So the vertex is at 0, 0. That 1/8, remember, is equal to 1 over 4p. So really just say, set 4p equal to 8. Ignore the 1. And that means p is equal to 2. So if you notice there, the focus is going to be 0, 2. Notice that I'm setting it equal to y. So I'm finding the focus. I'm adding 2 to that. The directrix will be y equals. Y equals, let's go the opposite way, -2. Notice the signs here from the focus and the directrix are different. They're always going to be different. They should always be opposites of each other. Then your axis of symmetry. Now this is easy. If the focus is on the y, the directrix is on the y, the axis of symmetry is on the x. They're always going to be opposites. So x is equal to, take the number, the x on the vertex, 0, and you're done. Without having to graph it or anything like that, you could easily find all these points. Let's do it the other way. Let's do x equals 1/12 y squared. Okay, again, 4p will equal -12. So p is equal to -3. Your vertex is still at 0, 0 because there's nothing inside the y. Your focus now. Now your focus is going to be on the x. So, and I'm going to go -3 over. So -3, 0. How did I know the focus was going to be on the x? Well, what letter is all by itself? X. That also means my directrix will be x. X equals opposite of a -3, +3. And then my axis of symmetry will be y equals. Y equals 0 of the vertex. There you go. That's that for finding those. Okay, on page 753, what happens when your center is not at 0, 0? And that's what the next examples are going to be. So on page 753, you see this, and see how this is done. Look how this is like set up, and with the H and K. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind as you're working these. Okay, so here's my first example. X plus 3 is equal to 1/4 parentheses y minus 1 squared. Now keep in mind the x is with the x and the y is with the y. So my vertex will be at -3, 1. So you got to keep in mind, again, take opposites. Think opposite signs. Now let's solve for p. Okay, p will be equal to 4p will be equal to 1/4, or actually to 4. Okay, that's where your p is located. So p is equal to 1. Okay, that means, now think about it this way. P is your distance from that point. Okay, so if my vertex is at -3, 1, this is an x equals, I am going x equals y squared. If it's x, then that means I'm going along on the x. See, this is equal, this is set with the x. So I need to move to the left and to the right. Now this one, in this case, since that's a positive one, I'm going to move to the right 1. So -3, move to the right. You move to the right, you will end up at -2, 1. That's your focus. Then you're going to go the other way for the directrix. So move to the left 1. And that would give you an answer of -4. Now notice here, I'm not doing the whole point. There it's just a x equals. Then your axis of symmetry is y equals according to the vertex 1. Okay, and there you go. So you want to make sure you know how to move it and which directions to move it. Last example, y plus 4 is equal to negative 1/16 x minus 4 squared. Same thing, vertex, positive 4 and negative 4. Now, keep in mind, this right here is that point there, the opposite. This one went with that. X with x, y with y. 4p is equal to negative 16, so p is equal to negative 4. So that means my focus, which is going to be y, I'm going to go down 4 from negative 4. So that would be 4 comma negative 8. For the directrix, it's going to be y equals, and I'm going to go up 4. Well, if you go up 4 from negative 4, you end up at 0. So y is equal to 0. And then your axis of symmetry is x equals 4. That's this section in a nutshell. If you do have questions, make sure to ask, because that's the way I can help y'all. I don't mind answering your questions, and it actually makes it very beneficial for me. All right? Good luck with that. Thank you so much, and I will hopefully see these notes tomorrow.